All right, good afternoon, everyone. According to my clock, it is now officially after 3 o'clock, so I think we'll go ahead and get started. Thank you all for joining us for our pre-submittal meeting today for our community capital funding process. We appreciate your time and your interest in this process, and hope today will be helpful for you. We will have a question and answer session at the end after I go through a presentation. Our goal really is to just walk through what the process looks like, hit some of the highlights of what the RFP includes, some of what we would be expecting in proposals, and then give the opportunity for you all to ask questions. To the extent that I can, I will attempt to answer those today. It may be that we have to do some follow-up homework on some of your questions. We are recording this session, so everything that's presented today and all your questions, your chat, will all be part of a recording. We will post this on our RFP site, as well as use it to help us with our note taking for make sure that we get all the questions and the responses appropriate for you all. So let me start with an introduction. I'm Denise Foreman, Assistant County Manager with Wake County, and I get the opportunity to lead this process on behalf of Wake County, our county commissioners, and leadership of Wake County. And I'm very excited to lead the process. This is my first time leading this one. I've led other competitive processes, but not this one. So I still have much to learn and much to figure out, but looking forward to going through this process. With that, I'll get started. And again, just a reminder, we are recording this. So if everyone could keep their microphones on mute until we get to the Q&A part at the end of the presentation, and then we'll work through a process where you all can raise your hands, I can call on you, and we can make sure that anyone has a question can get it answered. I'm not great at keeping up with the chat, but if that's your best method for getting your question out there, you can post it in the chat, and I'll try to get team members to help make sure that we get all of those addressed as well. But my preference would be when we get to the end that you raise your hand, and then I'll call on you and you can ask your question to the group. So with that, I will begin our presentation. And so I am now showing my screen that has a title page. Can someone confirm that you can see that on your screen?
Confirmed. Looks good.
Great. Thanks very much. I appreciate that. Very good. Thank you. Okay, so we'll get started. Our community capital process is one that the county has actually been doing for a number of years. We held our first process back in 2002. It has typically been conducted every 4 or 5 years, and we have had a limited amount of dollars to be able to award during this competitive process in the years that it was held. It is designed to help our nonprofit community partners do what you do best, which is really address the needs of our vulnerable populations across this community and help make a difference on the things that are important for Wake County as a government and as an organization, to the public that we serve and that you assist us and we assist you collectively in making happen. So what we really want to do is help increase your capacity to do the work that you do, and this process really helps make that happen. Through that, there are a number of needs that our nonprofit community helps us address in this community. And so we believe these dollars can help you all do that in a way that's sustainable for you all so that you can focus on the service delivery to the extent that's reasonable and appropriate, and use as many dollars as you can that way, and then help leverage the public dollars that help achieve those goals. This cycle, we do have more funding available than what we've had in the past. And so just tickled that our county commissioners and county leadership have been able to identify $4 million to make available for award. The last process in 2017 had $2 million available. So we have twice as much available. And then the next piece of good news is that we are now planning to do this process every 2 years. So that's never in stone, of course. It's up to our elected officials and dependent on funding availability. But we believe, and the elected officials have committed an interest in making sure this gets done more frequently, because what they believe from a nonprofit partnership perspective that you all have continued capital needs, and then waiting every 4 years to go through a competitive process puts you all at a limited ability to be able to address the needs that you all have because of the timeline of the 4-year cycle. So we hope that this will be more planful in the capital projects that you have, because you can anticipate that another cycle, if you're not ready for this one, or if you're not awarded in this one, that there will be another cycle in 2 years. And again, there's additional funding, twice as much as what we've had in the past. So our county commissioners are really committed to this effort, and I think that's evidenced by the changes that they made to support this effort. In our past, this is just a selective example that is helpful for folks to see the types of projects and the types of organizations we have partnered with in the past. These organizations represent smaller gifts and contributions to rather large gifts and contributions for anything from hospice care to women's care, homelessness, youth services, educational programming, food security issues. So you can see that it touches a lot of basis of things that are important to the county commissioners and are high priority. When you think about the work that you all look to the county to help support. We did host an educational session a couple of weeks ago in an effort. Like I said, this is my first time hosting this process. We've had it in place for a number of years, and so we wanted to do sort of a test with some of our community leaders out there to learn more of is the way that the process is currently structured helpful for you all as you look to grow your organizations, meet the needs of the community, leverage your resources in a way that makes sense, and how can we best help you all be successful in achieving your mission through the use of these dollars, while also protecting the interest of the county and the public dollars that we use. These are not our dollars, these are public dollars. And so we wanted to share information about why we ask for some of the information we ask for. Sometimes folks get a bit frustrated. There's a lot of information that we ask that you provide. It is time consuming and a lot of work to apply for this program, as well as other grants that you apply for. And we felt like it might be helpful for folks to understand why some of these are important and what we're trying to understand about your proposal and what we're trying to balance as we assess the risk of investing in these types of projects, as well as the benefit back to the community. Because it's competitive, there are always more needs than there are dollars, and so which means not everyone gets to walk away with what they ask for. They may not walk away with any funding. They may walk away with a smaller amount than what they ask for. So we felt like it was really important to understand both from our community partners what some of the barriers are that may keep you from applying or may have kept you from being successful with a prior application, or if you're considering a project moving forward, what may keep you from moving forward on a project at this time, and how might we address that as we plan for the next process in 2 years. So it was a good session. I learned an awful lot. We had fantastic insight and contributions that we are attempting to consider as we complete this process, as well as I give more thought to what we need to be doing to help support our nonprofit community leading into the next 2 years. That process, or that meeting, was recorded. It was a hybrid, so we had some folks in person and some folks online. So we were able to record that, and it is posted on the event website on our, which is the link is here on the screen. This presentation that I'm providing now will be posted to our finance site where the RFP is posted. So if you were able to navigate to the RFP site, Wake County Finance page, this presentation will be posted on that location, as well as a recording of today's session. So let's talk a little about process. We began this back in mid-June with a presentation to the Board of Commissioners to talk about what the process would look like, what our criteria would be. Much of the information you're receiving today is what we presented to them back in mid-June. As I indicated, we did do an educational session back in mid-July to help hit the things that I spoke to just previously. And then last week, we posted the RFP on our website. Today is our pre-submittal meeting. It is the only scheduled pre-submittal meeting. If questions come up after today, you will have my contact information. Those questions can come to me and me only, and I will help you work through whatever that question is to see if we can get an answer if it becomes obvious to you after today. Submittals then, so the key date highlighted in yellow, date and time, is October the 5th by 3 p.m. We would like a hard copy of your proposal as well as an electronic version on a USB drive by 3 p.m. on October the 5th. So our goal there is to give folks about 2 months. As I stated, I know there's a lot of content we're asking for here. And you all are doing really important work in this community and may or may not have resources dedicated to grant writing. And so we wanted to be sure that we give you as much of an opportunity as feels reasonable to make sure that you can fulfill the requirements of the RFP by the submittal date, but not give too much time, right? We want to run this process, get it completed, and hopefully get recommendations by the Board of Commissioners or decisions by the Board of Commissioners by the end of this calendar year. So if you move that process backwards, that has our submittals due October 5th at 3 p.m. Once we receive those, we have a team of folks who's going to work through a review process. The team will make consensus decisions about the recommendations that we will then move forward to the Board of Commissioners. On October the 14th and 15th, the team will receive presentations from all who submit and meet the minimum qualifications. And the minimum qualifications is it's something we'll hit in just a minute, but it's not much of a threshold. So we expect that most everyone who submits a proposal will also be doing a presentation for our group October 14th and 15th. The way the Delta variant is going, it's looking like those will probably be virtual presentations, but once we get those proposals, we'll see what's happening in the community and we'll make a determination of whether that should be in person or virtual, and we'll just have to stay flexible while we watch what's happening across the community. And then our team will complete the review process after those presentations are done and then make our recommendations to the Board of Commissioners on the November 8th work session. You do not need to be present at that Board of Commissioners work session, but it is a public meeting and you're welcome to be present. Once we make our recommendations, then it's up to the Board of Commissioners, their decision-making process, and it's gone a number of ways. They may, be in sync with the recommendations of the committee and move that recommendation forward for a vote that would come in later in November or December, or they may choose to ask for an additional step or some additional information. So once our recommendation is made to them, the Board of Commissioners can then navigate the path forward. So it's entirely up to them at that point. As I mentioned, our project criteria, there are a few minimums, but like I said, it's hopefully basic minimums that most of our projects wouldn't have any difficulty meeting. We are only funding capital projects. Capital projects would be greater than $100,000, less than $100,000 cost. We would consider that an operating expense. So greater than $100,000. Capital can include renovation, acquisition, construction, expansion, technology. So hard, something that you can touch. So that's how we define capital. Again, no operating cost. We would expect a realistic project budget mix of funding sources. So what we want to see are dollars that come through for a project that are at a glance, a reasonable assumption. So if we pick up a proposal and we can see that someone is proposing to buy land and build a building for $200,000, chances are that might not be a very realistic project budget. So we might continue to look at that proposal, realize it really isn't based on actual economic conditions in Wake County, and maybe one that we would need to do further consideration of. I don't think that's expected. That has never happened in our past. Most of our projects come in and you all do a very thorough job in putting together your plan, and it demonstrates the thought and the time and the effort that you've put into your plan. So I don't expect that would be the case, but we don't want to waste our time if the due diligence hasn't been done on a project. We do want to see an annual operating budget in detail. So if your organization's operating budget is not included, we would not consider investing capital dollars in your project. So we have more detail that we'll get into of what we're looking for in your operating budget. But if it does not include an operating plan, it is not one that we would consider investing in, and therefore the evaluation of that project wouldn't move forward. As I said, we don't fund operating, but we need to see operating because we need to make sure that you have the operating support to continue to meet the mission and objective of what you're trying to do as an organization. We understand the volatility in budgets. For nonprofits especially, they're often grant funded or based on fundraising and donations. So we understand that, but we need to see that operating budget so we can have a level of comfort in the organization that we would be investing in. Also, we will not be supporting any requests that ask for more than 40% of your total project budget come from these dollars. So any request that you make at the county, you all would need to either raise or be responsible for 60% of the total project budget or more. You're more than welcome to go up to 99%. And we just fill a small gap for you. But no more than 40% from Wake County will be eligible for funding your project. And then the maximum request, as I said, we have $4 million available total. We do want, the commissioners are interested in supporting multiple projects, and so we would request that no project request more than $2 million for their single project. So those are our minimum. Anything that does not meet the minimum would not move forward for consideration by our group. Like I said, I don't expect that will be the case. You all put too much time and energy in these things, but that is our minimum expectation. So now I'm going to get into what we will evaluate projects on, and this is just information straight out of the RFP, nothing that we haven't included in the RFP, so it won't be fully comprehensive, but I just want to hit the highlights that may trigger questions that you all have that you want to get some clarity on, if there's any clarity I can provide or follow up on later. So we do want to understand the scope of your project. Obviously, the intent of these dollars is to make sure that we can address, help support addressing unmet needs in our county. And so we want to understand from you, what is the unmet need that you are attempting to address? How will this investment help address that? What is the clear linkage, to the extent that you've got data to help us understand the numbers, the volume, the drivers, best practices in other communities. So if this is not something that's currently in place in our community, but you've seen the difference that it makes in another community and you've got data, compel us. This team needs to understand, and we are coming from a diverse perspectives where we may have experience in your area, we may not. And so we need you to really help us understand. Don't assume anything that we are going to know about your organization, your business, your mission, the problem that you're solving, so attempting to solve. So explain that here in this project scope with data, with best practices, with examples of how the proposal that you're moving forward would help us address this need. Link it to the board goals. That's something that's also often taken for granted, but our commissioners put a lot of time and energy into developing their board goals. It is on our website. You can just Google it, Wake County Commissioner Board Goals. And I think that they're going to appreciate that alignment, because these are the things they have said are important to them. They've heard from the community. They're attempting to reflect back to the community the things that they have heard, and supporting proposals that help achieve that will be important to them. We also want to understand the scope of impact on our county residents. We recognize some of the proposals coming forward may or may not address the need countywide. It may be reserved to a geographic region. It may be reserved for a subpopulation, for a very targeted purpose, and we get that. And so if it is a limited scope, it is not a countywide, explain it. Just help us understand from a rational perspective why this is targeted, why this is focused, and what the numbers are expected to be to make the difference. We also want to encourage collaboration. One of the things that we know are that A and B and C are often related. So someone struggling with food security may also be struggling with housing and may also be struggling with mental health, may also be struggling with their children's educational progress. And so too many times these things are addressed in silos, and as organizations that are competing for dollars, our dollars come with strings attached with expected outcomes related to limited view. And one of the things that we really want to see and understand from your proposal is how you're collaborating with other organizations to recognize addressing problems from a whole person or a more comprehensive kind of standpoint. So we're trying to do better at that in local government. And so we are looking to our nonprofit partners to also help model that for us and help us support that approach. And then in this section, we also want to see your mechanism to track and measure success. So earlier you talked about what the need is, how your proposal would address that need. And now we want to know if what measures will you put in place or continues to have in place to demonstrate your success at achieving that goal through this investment and your body of work. So what are those measures to track and demonstrate success? They help us tell the story of how our dollars are making a difference in the community, and they help you tell the story of how you used our dollars and why this funding is important to move forward. Those measures of success would be included in any funding agreement. So any projects that get funded would have a funding agreement in place. And once the project is completed, we would expect a report on those measures and success to help us understand, did we in fact achieve what we desired to achieve? We wouldn't necessarily collect the dollars back. There's not necessarily a penalty, but we do want to understand if you're not meeting those measures, well, why not? And what was the barrier? And are there other things that need to be addressed from a partnership standpoint, things like that, to help you meet those measures? So that it's important for us to understand. Moving further into the RFP, the next section is project budget and funding sources. Obviously, a realistic project budget to the extent that you can. We heard in that educational session, capital expenses these days are have had a wild ride in recent year. Land costs may be higher. If you're acquiring an existing building, it may be going up and down. Building costs are going up and down. And so we want you to put as realistic of a budget forward as you can, given what we are able to know today and at the time that you submit your proposal. So we recognize there's volatility in the market, but we do have construction experts that will be on our panel and have access to technology experts to help us test to make sure we don't want to bring forward funding for a project that's not realistic, and therefore the project can't move forward and you're not able to deliver it. We also then obviously want to make sure the timing of the funding aligns with the timing of the expenditures. We want to see that that's all in sync and that there aren't gaps or delays in your project getting delivered because you don't have your funding lined up in time. So we need to see that timing as well as a clear demonstration for the need for the county capital investment. What is it the county's investment gets for this project? Is there a but for? And if there is, what is the but for? Does it mean the project doesn't move forward at all without these funds? Or does the project move forward, but it can move forward with these elements, this additional capacity or these additional features if the county invests? And what's the benefit of that? Or does the project just simply not happen if it doesn't get the county investment? So demonstrate that to us, help us understand how your capital budget will work, what those sources are, and why the county dollars are needed from a calculation standpoint. We want to see your project timeline. We obviously want a clear and realistic project schedule. So we have had experience where projects come forward, people are potentially overly optimistic in what they believe they can deliver in the time frame that they have available, and have been disappointed and frustrated. Both we have as well as the organization has, because the project didn't move forward with the funding available in the timeline that they wanted, and we didn't get the project delivered in the time frame that we wanted. Additionally, because this is now a 2-year cycle, we are looking for projects to be ready to get started within this 2-year time frame. Previously, because we were on a 4-year cycle, we could be a little more lenient, or we're willing to be a little more lenient, that you might have a project that's still in a very much a visionary standpoint, and you're still working on a lot of the details of it. If that's the case, take some good notes, be prepared. We'll be back in 2023 with another process. But we are really looking now for projects that can get started in the next 2-year time frame. And then we need to see, again, your project operating plan. We want to understand your organization's capacity to continue to operate during a construction project. We want to know what experience you've had to do the type of project that you're bringing forward, technology or construction type capital. We want to know what we have done in the past, similar to maybe what you're proposing, or experience in your day job, perhaps if it's a different leadership team, or a leadership team from your volunteer boards and community leadership that help make sure that this project can get delivered. Really, what we're trying to figure out here is, do you have the organizational capacity to deliver the project that you're proposing? And if so, what demonstrates that? And then, of course, we need to see your operating budget. I spoke to this earlier. We really want to understand your stability as an organization. Do you have the funds to continue to operate? Can you afford this capital commitment, the 60%, that at minimum 60% that you have to bring to the table? And if there are increased operating costs associated with your project, can you afford those increased costs? And so we really need to see that as part of this section of the proposal. So those are the key elements that we're going to be using our scoring tool to evaluate your project. Our evaluation process, as I mentioned, we do have a multidisciplinary team of Wake County employees and community partners who will be reviewing each of the proposals, who will be participating in the presentations. We will have criteria that's based on those key elements I just outlined for us to develop our consensus scores. We will develop that based off of what you submit in writing and what we learned during the presentation process. So those are the two key things that we're going to be basing our decisions off of. So your proposal is really, really important. I know it's a lot of effort, but I do hope that you'll take the time to make sure that you include everything that we're looking for as outlined in the RFP in a way that's understandable for our team, given that we may not be as well versed in your organization or the problem that you're attempting to address as you may be. We will then align those project scores with funding availability. So it is very possible that you may propose funding of a certain dollar amount, and we may not be able to recommend full funding because we're trying to balance all the proposals that we get and the dollars that are available. So it may be that a recommendation to the Board of Commissioners may not include full funding for your project. It may. So part of that's going to be based off of the scores, the types of projects that we receive, and the dollars that we have available. And then, like I said, we'll present those recommendations to the Board of Commissioners on November the 8th. As I said, I am your county contact. Once the RFP was released, we do ask that you not contact other Wake County employees, our evaluation team members, or our Board of Commission members in an attempt to inform them or influence them regarding decision about this project. Many of you have potentially have commissioners that are part of your boards or part of volunteer groups. You may contact them on a regular basis for other reasons. That is not prohibited, but please don't contact them about the project that you're proposing. And if they are a part of your organizational structure, either from a volunteer capacity or maybe they serve on your board or a committee, we would ask that they recuse themselves from any decision making regarding your proposal. But otherwise, continue business as usual. If your board needs to vote on something that you're going to submit, please have them do that. You don't have to have a Board of Commission member leave your group. We don't want to ask that, but we do want to recognize that that this is a competitive process, and we do want to honor the integrity of that competitive process and not have groups out there lobbying regarding their project while we go through the competitive component of it. Once that proposal has been made, the recommendations have been made on November the 8th, then the quiet period, as I call it, is over, and then you're more than welcome to contact commissioners or staff at that point, but not prior to. So anything prior to comes to me. So you've got my email address there. You can raise questions today or submit them in writing, and I will make sure that you all get responses, and we will have a running list of Q&A that will be included on the RFP website. And then we have a last actually of when you can ask me questions so that I can make sure that the responses get back to everyone, and that will be until September the 15th. September the 15th is the last date that you can submit a question to me. That's a couple of weeks before the RFP is due, and so the intent there is to make sure that you are fully reading the entire RFP. You have all your questions answered in time for you to finalize your proposal and get it to us by October the 4th. So last questions to me no later than September the 15th. And then we'll get the responses out to those within a couple of days, and everybody can have that accessible if you need it. So with that, that is my presentation. So at this point, really, my goal is to get to your questions. So let me zip back over here to my next screen. There we go. So like I said, if you want to raise your hand, I will call on folks as I can see them, and we will work through the Q&A process that way. So the first hand I see is Matt Strickland.
Hey, Denise. Thank you so much for today. This is great. Just question around the collaboration piece and how you are looking at that. Are you looking at the identified gap, countywide gap, and collaboration around the gap, or just what is our track record of collaboration with other organizations and partners in the past to show a strong collaborative effort, or both? Does that make sense?
Yeah, so it's really both. So collaboration in a couple of ways. Yes, we would love to hear your history, because I think that's going to be demonstrative of your path forward, right? So if you've got a strong history in collaboration, we would expect to see that to continue moving forward. We definitely want to see that as it relates to the problem that you're working to solve. And then even your funding sources can often demonstrate collaboration, because we can see where you are able to tap resources to be able to fund the project. So we would expect that we'll see collaboration in a couple of areas. Yes.
Great. Thank you so much.
Yep. Other questions? I don't see any more hands officially raised. Let me see if anybody put anything over in the chat. I do not see anything over in the chat. Adam Hartzell. I see your
Hey,
hand
how are
raised.
you? Quick question. I'm interested in in what can be included in the 60%. If a portion of that expense will be realized before a decision is made, in other words, it's a project with several phases, or you're already in the midst of it, or something like that, can you count that as part of the 60%, the expense that has maybe already gone towards that project if it's in phases?
So that's a good question.
I'll give you an example. We've got a property that we're renovating, okay? And we recently spent money to pave the parking lot, repave the parking lot. That is part of the overall plan. Could we include that expense as part of the in-kind, the 60%?
I don't know. So I don't know how cut and dry we can be on that, just because there are going to be nuances. That one feels like a tough one. So it may be an example is if you bought land so that you can build on it. That's definitely part of a total project cost, even though that might have been a cost that you incurred prior to actually getting this project brought forward. So if you've done improvements prior to the project, I don't know, Adam, that one feels a little weird for me. We'll follow up, and I'll see if I can talk to our facilities folks about if there's a way we can we can more clearly say what's acceptable prior, what's acceptable after, so you can have clarity on what to include and not include. That's a good question. It may be somewhat nuanced, but I'll talk to our facilities folks and see if they can help me navigate that a little more clearly for you all.
Thank you. That'd be helpful.
Okay. I see E. Sanders.
Evelyn Sanders. Wanted to ask you, in the past, when we have submitted proposals to the county and the city, in your financials, they have requested sometimes an audit. Would this be required of this project? They get to be kind of expensive having those done with a small nonprofit. And the
Yes.
other question that I had is well, I got 3 questions, but I'll give you 2 right now. What's the average award amount? I know you're getting more money this time, but what has been in the past the average award amount?
All right, I'll take the first question. Yes, we do ask if you have had an audit completed to submit your audit results with your proposal. So we would not require you to get an audit done. We have an Excel spreadsheet that's available. It's an attachment in the RFP, and it's available as an Excel file on our finance webpage, so you can just fill in the Excel spreadsheet. So we wouldn't require that you have an audit if you don't have one already, but we do ask then that you submit, you complete the Excel spreadsheet so that we can see your financial history. Yes.
And you accept a review in lieu of an audit? Because we always get okay.
Yeah. So you have to, again, complete that spreadsheet, but that would be in lieu of an audit. Yes.
Okay.
And then the question about the average amount. I'm not sure of the average amounts. When I look there at that slide I had just a few moments ago, the minimum we did was $50,000, or the minimum that I saw in our history was $50,000, and then the maximum was 1.75. At the time, I don't know that we would have done a full funding of $2 million. We just didn't have that much money available. So I don't know if there's an average, but I would guess probably 500 to $1 million would be about an average amount.
Okay.
500,000 to $1 million. Yeah, sorry.
Okay. And that amount would be 40% of the overall cost, right?
It would have been. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. But again, you don't have to ask for that much. We just ask that the total project be greater than $100,000. And so 40% of that would be $40,000.
Mm-hmm.
So the minimum that we may see is 40,000. If you have a $100,000 project and you just need 10% from us, you're more than welcome to only ask for $10,000. You don't have to ask for the full 40%. That will be just fine. But anyway, so it can range anywhere in there. Yeah.
Okay. And if you receive money in the past, is there anything that says you need to wait a little while, or, something?
There's not, because there's been 4 years between, even an organization that received funding in the past, over a 4-year period may be ready to do the next phase or take on the next portion of a component of the problem that they're seeking to address. Mm-hmm. So we do not have a provision that would keep someone from being eligible, even if their organization received funding in the past. But I do think that, that's got a little bit of a double-edged sword, right? We don't want to continue to fund the same organizations necessarily when there's a lot of other organizations that also have needs. But we know that organizations have the ability to deliver on a project because they've already demonstrated that with us. And we know that they're tackling really tough and important issues that are important to our commission because we have awarded in the past. So I can see a little bit of a positive and a negative actually from being an awardee in the past, but it certainly would not prohibit you from being awarded in the future. Okay. Good questions. Thank you. Francisco Chavez.
Hello, Denise. My question regards the presentations. Does the same person who submit the application need to be the presenter, or can like two board members present together, or a different board member?
Yeah, you can have, that's a great question. As I said, I haven't done this particular process in the past, but in other processes I've done, we have had like member teams do the presentation, because you may get questions about your operating budget, your capital budget, your data, your capacity. So you may want to have 1, 3, 5 people available. So you might have one person do the presentation, but when it comes to our Q&A at the end, you may want to have other experts in your room that helped you bring this proposal together to make sure that you're confident in the answers. And so it may be helpful. So absolutely, it does not have to be the person who did the writing or who submitted the actual document to us. It can absolutely be any combination of your staff or board members or whoever can do a presentation that represents your project well, and then who can be available to answer our questions, which may come from any variety of perspectives. Great question. Deborah Barquette.
I had to unmute myself. Okay, so just to clarify, the submittals are by October 5th, and then the presentations are, is that the November 8th?
The presentations you'll do to our evaluation team will be October 14th or 15th. We'll get those scheduled once we find out how many projects that we've got, and how many proposals we'll have to hear from, but we'll get those scheduled either on the 14th or 15th. So at this time, I would recommend whoever you think would be part of your presentation team hold their calendar for the 14th and 15th, so that you can be available at a time that we have available for our team. Yeah, good question. We won't be able to fill that in until after the 5th, when we know how many proposals we have. So, yep. All right, good questions so far. Anyone else have a question? I'll give you just another minute or two. If you're still looking at the RFP or thinking about what I said, any other questions? Anybody that had a question have another one? I still see a couple hands raised, so I want to make sure that if you have a follow-up question, I'm not missing it. Okay. All right, I think we've got all the questions. So thank you so much for your time today. Like I said, this presentation as well as a recording of today's session will be on our RFP website at wakegov.com/finance. So you can get additional information that you may need there. And then I am your primary contact. I am Denise Foreman. My email address is in the RFP. And so please feel free to reach out to me, and we'll make sure that our information gets posted to that website. That's the best place to make sure you get the information. We should have that posted. Today is Thursday. It will probably be Tuesday or Wednesday of next week before we can get everything posted. So be patient. Don't look today. Won't be there today. But probably Tuesday or Wednesday of next week, we'll have it all posted and available for you all. So thank you so much. We appreciate your time. Last chance. Any other questions?
Excellent job today.
Great. Thank you all so much. I appreciate it. Good luck. Go get some good proposals for us. Let's spend some money. Let's spend some money.